Hello guys, welcome to Houdini Made Simple. In this video, we are going to work on creating normals for the geometry as well as simple but effective UVs, so we can start assigning texture to the asteroids. So let's dive in. Okay guys, so we just finished last video working on creating the rock and then copying this into multiple points with different size and orientation. So in this video, we want to start working on lighting and texturing. The thing is, before doing that, we have to make sure that we have two things that are working properly, and those are the normals and the UVs. So let's start with the normals. So guys, normals, they are vectors that will tell you in which way the surface or a point is facing, and they will affect how a 3D model interacts with the lighting and shading. So if we go back to the rock we create on the last video, and on the right side we click on display normals, we're gonna see these green arrows facing out of the surface, and these are the default compute normals by Houdini, and they are based on the geometry shape. Basically, they are created just for us to see the geometry in the viewport, but they are not stored attribute yet. So if we go into the node information, clicking on the eye, we can see that we have the P attribute, but we don't have any normal attribute yet. And there are two types of normals we can create and store. We have the vertex normal and the point normal. But in this case, we don't have any of them yet, so we want to compute them so we do have the attribute. So we have a few ways to compute the normals to create the normal attribute. The two main ways you're going to be using is going to be the facet node, and the other way is to use a normal node. So if we connect the mountain to the facet node and we set the display flag on the facet, now if we go to the info, nothing happened yet. But if we go down the parameters node and we click on post compute normals, now we can check that we do have a point attribute. A second point attribute is going to be the normals. And if we display the normals on the viewport, now we can see that the color changed to blue. So this means that now we do have stored a point attribute called normal. If we go back to the mountain, we have in green, and if we display the facet node, we have the normals in blue. So the other option is to use the normal node. So if we connect the mountain and set the display flag on the normal node, you'd see that now we are still seeing the arrows in green, even though if we go to the information, we do have a normal, but in this case it's a vertex attribute. And we could use vertex normal for shading, but for now I'm gonna change this to point attribute. So now we can see again how the color changed back to blue. This means that we have a point attribute for the normals that's gonna be called N. So if we go to the geometry spreadsheet, we can see that we have two vector attributes. One is going to be the P for position, and the other one is going to be the N for normals. You can check here that they are both vector attributes. That's why we see 3 columns on each. So finally, we're going to connect the normals to the copy to point. So if we first set the display flag on the copy to points and we display the normals, we still have the green arrows, meaning that we don't have the attribute yet. So we are going to compute this, in this case connecting the normal node to the copy to points, and now we can see that all the arrows, they look blue, and we do have the normal attribute in all the copies. Okay guys, so now let's focus on creating UVs for this geometry. So basically UVs are a way to tell Houdini how to project a 2D texture into a 3D object. So in this case, if we hold spacebar and 5, we're gonna go into the UV view, and as you can see, we have this black and white grid, and we don't have any UVs yet. So we're gonna have to create, in order to project the texture we're gonna be using, is gonna be a rock texture into this 3D geometry. So let's start by creating a quick material so we can apply into the rock, and we can see kind of like a reference how this would look like when we do the unwrap. So let's go and create a material network. Now let's get in, and in this case we're going to be using Karma for rendering. want to talk about more in detail later. But let's start creating standard material X surface. This is going to be our base material, and we have to connect a material image, material X image. We're gonna connect the out to the base color, and here on the file name we can click over here and we can apply this rock texture. So let's rename first this material to something easier, like asteroid material X. And now let's go back to the object level, and here on the geometry asteroid, I'm gonna go to the render tab and we can dive in and select this material asteroid. And now if we go back to the perspective view, hitting spacebar and 1, we can see that we have a brownish color on the rock, but we don't have any texture yet. And this is because, again, we don't have any unwrap done yet. So we have a few ways to do like a quick unwrap. We can go right away and create the UV texture, and in this case connect this, and now we have this 3D geometry flattened into a 2D shape. And if we go, we can see we have some kind of texture, but there is a lot of stretch over here. So there are better ways to do this. Again, this is not a complex geometry, and the texture is pretty straightforward too. So we don't have to spend too much time. We can get away with some simple UV. Again, we can play with some of these options and see which one could work better. In this case, this one looks a bit better, but still we have some artifacts, especially here. So we have better ways to do this. In this case, we're gonna be more precise by selecting where is gonna be the seams of the unwrap, and we're gonna be cutting the geometry before flattening. And again, if we keep playing with these options, we might find one that is good enough for what we need. So for example, in this case, if I select the face option, we can see that we have like pretty good texture over the rock. But if we check the UVs, they are pretty messy, so maybe we don't want to use this one. Although it could definitely work if we go here, connect to the copy to points and go into the camera. This could be good enough for this shot. But again, we're gonna try a different technique so we can also learn how to do like a better UV that you can use in other projects too. So what we can do is basically go back to the normal before we have the UVs, and go to the select and start selecting edges. In this case, we can select something here, maybe in the middle. Let's go to the wireframe so we can actually see where are the edges, and let's select over here. If we double click, we're gonna select the whole edge across the rock. Let's select this one, for example, and now we can hit the tab key and create a group create, hit enter. Let's clear this for now, and we can use this edge as a seam. So we wanna create a UV flatten node in this case and connect the group into the flatten. This is by default flattening the surface, as you can see here on the UV view, but still we have a lot of stretch and artifacts. So we want to use these edges as seams, so we have like a better process on the flattening. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the group 1 as seams, so we can use these edges to cut and flatten the geometry. So in this case, it's gonna be two shapes, two pieces. Now we can go and let's say disable the enable manual layout. We have these two shapes, and we can go and start playing with the size if we need to. Let's start making this bigger, so go back to smooth shaded, and now we can go back here to the perspective view, and as we can see, we have something that looks pretty decent. And if we check on the UVs, they are not super messy, so I feel this could be a good UVs for this shot. We can again play with the size depending how big or small we want this texture. In this case, I'm gonna go ahead and move this a bit to the right, so let's make it 2. set the display flag on the null, go back to the camera to check it out, and this looks really good, so we're going to move forward. And one way you can check how the texture is being projected on this 3D shape is going back to the UV views. In this case, let's go back to 1 and 1, and if we go and hit the D key on the keyboard, we can go to background, and over here on the UV tab we can select to show us, instead of this grid, in this case the UV gray grid, we can go and select the rock texture in my case, and you're gonna see the rock texture on the background. This is the one we are using right now. We can actually get the brightness a bit up, and this is gonna be the way you're gonna be projecting. In this case, if you make this bigger, basically this same texture is gonna be mapping over here and over here and over here, but in this case you cannot see the seams and how it's getting connected, so it works really well for our project right now, so I'm gonna keep it like this. Okay guys, thank you for watching. That's it for today. In this video we create the normals for the rock as well as a UV, so we can project a 2D texture into the rock. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you like it, and if you find this useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys. I will see you on the next one.